May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This is the night, Maundy Thursday, Mandatum, that means commandment. So it's Commandment Thursday. The night that Jesus gives us a new commandment, his one and only commandment that he ever gave. His commandment to love one another as he has loved us. As he has loved us, those, of course, are the operative words on this night. And before the night is over, after the bread and wine of both our agape meal and Eucharist, after the smiles and the laughter and the joy of being in community together on this night, after it all, we will remember the terrifying events that came next, the events that led to tomorrow night's focus, the crucifixion of Jesus on the hill at Golgotha, the place of the skull. I wonder sometimes if perhaps the loneliness might have been one of the most bitter aspects of this whole week for Jesus. That deep down in the bones loneliness that comes when all the tears you have to cry have been shed, and yet you know your heart is still weeping. Is that what he felt that night in the garden, when he knew that his hour had just about come, and all he wanted was for his closest friends to stay with him? They wanted it too, of course, and they went, but they just couldn't quite do it. They just couldn't be there in the way he so desperately needed them to be there that night. It didn't take some supernatural knowledge, to realize what was going to come next. Judas was not really all that discreet, and neither was the word on the street. The word on the street was that the powers that be, both the religious and the secular political powers that be, that all of them had decided they had had just about enough of him. They were ready to be done with him so that they could move on. No, it didn't take supernatural knowledge to know, just common sense. Common sense that his time was up, that now he really would have to either cut and run or move forward and do what would be the hardest thing that he had done in the entire time he had lived on this earth. Fisher cut bait, isn't that how the saying goes? I told you on Sunday that there were things to look at and to listen to on this night, ways that this story connects with our own. And truth be told, there are many, many things that connect with our own stories. He is betrayed, and there are times when we feel betrayed also. He is denied, and there are times when we are denied also. He is stripped and whipped, and there are times when we too are laid bare and feel like we've been beaten up. But maybe one of the most poignant parts of this whole story, one of the most poignant parts that either he or we will ever feel, is this deep down in the bones loneliness. Tonight, when the service is just about said and done, we will act out this loneliness as the hangings are torn off of the pulpit, the lectern, as the altar frontal is stripped from the altar. Tonight we'll act it out as all the ornaments of liturgy that are so much part of the beauty of the service, the candles, the silver paten, the silver chalice, as all of these are removed. Tonight we'll act out the loneliness he felt as the reserved sacrament is moved from its place in the aumbrey, that little place right below the red candle. And the door of that aumbrey is left open so that all can see that it is empty. We'll act it out as the bare altar is washed with water and vinegar, and a palm branch left over from Palm Sunday, as the processional cross disappears behind a black veil, and as a crown of thorns is placed on the altar where the bread and the wine usually are. Tonight we will remember, in the most basic sense of that word, the sense not only of calling into our memory, but of remembering, of reconstructing, of putting back together in a real and tangible sense the desolation, the emptiness, the spentness, the deep down in the bones loneliness that he, Jesus, felt and lived that night and in the coming day, as he had everything stripped from him and he was left alone on a cross between two strangers. We do this not just to make ourselves sad. We do it so that when we have those times in our own lives where we feel the same way, we'll be able to remember that he's been there before. That when we call upon him to help us in our own moments of need, times in our own lives when we need so desperately to be reached and to be touched in the depths of our own aloneness, we'll remember that he has been there, felt it, nearly been crushed by it, but moved through it. Moved through it, even through the most horrible of deaths, which turned out not to be the end, but instead a doorway to a new day.